why did that bother me?
Exactly.
Actually, and when you become more self-aware, you become more aware of the patterns around you. You're like, isn't that interesting? And I'm not saying this from a place of judgment, because I was one of those people that was really, really good for for getting rid of people pleasing. And so that's a really important aspect of self-awareness.
That's it, living. So, hi everybody. For anyone that doesn't know me, my name is Angela Curie. I'm a feminine empowerment coach, and I specialise in helping women to heal after narcissistic abuse. So, how are you, Carol?
Good, thank you. Really good. Yeah. Been busy, but lots of exciting things happening. So that's great.
Good.
So we always start with a quote, and I shared the quote a minute ago. It is, self-awareness is the ability to take an honest look at your life without attachment to it being right or wrong, good or bad. And I thought this is a really good quote, because self-awareness is not self-consciousness. And I think we've got to be careful of that. Like, we've got to be aware of ourselves without judgment, just like we shouldn't judge others. We've got to make sure that we are taking an honest look at ourselves without judgment, because if we are being a bit judgy, we're less likely to be honest. We're more likely to make excuses, aren't we? And that's not helpful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very important to be aware of how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive the world around us. You know, self-awareness is just that introspection, being aware of your thoughts, your feelings, your energy, how you present yourself, but also how you make others feel as well. That's very important, being aware of other people's feelings as well.
Yeah. And I think journaling is a really great way to build up your self-awareness. Having a journaling practice. So I was looking into it, and I always like to say, get curious. So whenever, particularly with triggers, so if you feel triggered by someone or something, so a trigger is like where you have a strong emotional response to something that perhaps may not have bothered somebody else. I'm always like, get curious. Why did that bother me?
Exactly.
And I was looking at it today, and better than a why question is a what question, apparently. What and how, because it's more progressive. So if we say why, we can get stuck in the past, whereas if we think what or how, it's going to launch us into the future, into making changes that's going to be helpful, be progressive. Yeah,
exactly. That's it. A trigger, you see, we blame the external for our triggers. But if we're triggered by a person or a thing, it's something within us that we need to check on. So, like, if there's something that bothers you about a certain person, that's actually showing you parts of yourself that you're suppressing, and parts of yourself that you want to own yourself. That's your shadow side. So that's where the triggers and the awareness of your triggers is so important, because they are your teachers. Your triggers are your guides. So anytime you get angry, like, you know, you're not getting, like, the person itself isn't the reason for your anger. What is in that person that is reflected back into you? This is the awareness, and this is why it's so important to be aware of your triggers. Like, you know, we always blame the external for our triggers. Look within. Be aware of why is it making you feel this way? Where does this trigger come from? What part of your past is this resonating with?
Yeah, and I think there's certainly, I know that I myself used to be just on autopilot a lot, and you don't realize that that's how you're living your life. You're just running programs and not often trying to avoid those uncomfortable feelings, making excuses. Like in coaching, what we say a lot is like taking responsibility, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you take responsibility for the being treated badly by someone and their choices in that, but that you take responsibility for how you arrived in that situation. Exactly. It's like spotting the pattern in yourself. Noticing that you don't have boundaries when you should have boundaries, and that kind of thing. So it's taking responsibility, 100% responsibility for everything in your life, so that you're not doing that thing of going, oh well, it's because I have this bad upbringing, or it's because I haven't got enough money, or if I haven't.
Like, that's something that triggers me. Oh, I come from a long line of fiery Latinos, or oh, my parents were angry, so I'm angry. It's like we can unlearn this behavior.
Yeah.
Just because you were born into a certain environment doesn't mean you actually have to take on that environment. And as you just said as well, we're in autopilot in this conditioned world where we're literally going around on this circle, and we're not aware of how we're feeling. And if we are feeling bad, we end up, like, when we're unaware, we end up drinking or taking drugs or doing something to distract ourselves, to bury all these emotions. Whereas in actual fact, we need to face these emotions, because when we can actually understand ourselves, we can better understand how we can be, with other people as well, and how we can, how we treat other people,
Yeah. And I think, but I do think it's important. So it's important how we treat other people, but self-awareness is coming away from other people's opinions, so it's like, it's being aware that your behavior affects somebody else and living by your own values. I mean, a lot of people, if you ask them what are your values, they probably couldn't tell you that. Like, and so it's like, so are you living by your values? You can't be living by your values if you don't know what they are. And also, are they your values, or have they just been handed to you?
Yeah. Like, are you a sheep following the crowd? Are you in that room gossiping about people because everyone else is doing it? Are you even aware of what you're doing is wrong? And that's the thing that keeps coming back to me. Like, self-awareness is being aware of how you speak, how you present yourself to this world, how you are in your own body. You know what I mean? Are you in those rooms with people that are unaware? Do you know what I mean? Like, are you in those, like, self-awareness is just, it's important for how we present ourselves in this world. Like, if you're going around on that hamster wheel like a sheep following the crowd, doing the wrong thing just because everyone else is doing it, that is very unaware.
Yeah.
We have to start living with our own values, as you said, and what actually is right for us and for others.
Actually, and when you become more self-aware, you become more aware of the patterns around you. You're like, isn't that interesting? And I'm not saying this from a place of judgment, because I was one of those people that would be moaning about that at work, repeating, like, the amount of times that I see old friends and we just go through the repertoire of the same stories and the same moan and the same this and the same, and it's like, it's just a program that you run through. And if that is that's great if it's all really positive stuff and it's helping you, but quite often the things that we're saying is not helpful. It's like,
it's not
moaning about
exactly
people.
The language we use, like saying even just a simple thing of saying, "Oh, the weather is miserable," or they don't even say the weather is miserable. It's like, "Oh, it's miserable, isn't it?" When they're talking about the weather, it's like, use a different word. You're actually effectively saying everything is miserable.
Yeah.
How you speak as well, the language you use. If you're moaning, as I said, all the time, if you're negative all the time, you're going to attract more of that negativity into your life. Speak positive affirmations. Speak positive words. This changes your life. The way you speak about yourself or to anyone else is so important as well. This is it. Like, I was the same as you. I was on that hamster wheel. I was following that crowd. I was saying things that they were saying, thinking it was okay. And like, now that I'm out of that, I look back and I see parts of myself in the past that I did not like.
Yeah.
But now I'm very aware of how I present myself and what I speak, because we don't know what anyone is going through. So you have to be careful about how you speak in front of other people as well. Like,
yeah, and I think it's really easy to fall back into as well. Like, and that's the important thing if you're on a self-awareness journey, is that you're going to have to be able to face the dark parts of yourself, and you're going to have to be okay with it. And it's just like Marius has just asked, any tips how people can find their values. I would start with sitting down and asking yourself, like, write 5 things that's important to you. Yeah. You could start with, what values would you say? Sometimes it's easier to think of what values would my parents given me, because they're the rules that you were told to be brought up with. and then think, do I agree with that rule? You know, do I, and what's important to me? What's, you know, it might be environmental things, it might be how you treat others, it might be what you put in your body, it could be in any aspect of your life. What is it that's important to you? And what you might find is when you've written them down, that maybe you're not doing them very well, you know, and you're going to have to be okay with that. Because if you aren't okay with, where, you know, being honest with yourself, and that, and honesty being, maybe I'm not so great after all, is that you're likely to make excuses and then not actually be able to work on it. So it's not about, when you look at your values, it's not about like, what is it that I do? It's like, what is it that I think is important? Imagine that you have a brand new human being. I love this little analogy. Like, just imagine that you were given the gift of a human being, and it's your job to look after that human being for its whole life and make sure that it is, you know, that it's happy, that it's that it has a purpose, and that it contributes to society, that you know, it's that it can flourish and grow and do well and be proud of itself. Like, what would you tell that human being it has to do? And then try and live by that.
Exactly.
And the great thing about knowing what your values are and trying your best to live by them, and it's just like doing your best, you know, like, it's sometimes you might not, some days you might not do so great. Like, I know that I really try not to moan about people, because I think it's really important that you don't, that you show forgiveness, that everybody is just human, do you know what I mean? And you shouldn't be in rooms moaning about people.
Exactly.
But it's easy to fall into, and so some days I'm like, probably shouldn't have said that, maybe I was a bit whingy today, you know.
That's the environment as well. Like, when you're surrounded by people, like, you know, that do that, it is hard not to fall back into those ways. You know what I mean? And so it's just about being aware of that and taking a step away from that situation and avoiding those kind of situations as well.
Yeah,
because that was the thing I was reading about.
If there are people that you are with that you find it very hard not to fall into behaviors that are not in line with your values, then maybe spend a bit less time with them.
Exactly.
You know, I'm not
That's
saying
the thing. I was reading in Atomic Habits, it was saying, like, if you want to change a habit, you change the environment that habit was developed in, and that's it. Like, you know, that's the simple thing. Just don't go into that room. You know what I mean? If you feel like that you could end up falling back into that, just don't go into that room. Avoid the situation. You know, out of sight, out of mind. If I do this with certain habits of myself, like, you know, don't buy the thing and you won't eat it. You know, change the environment.
That's why it's so hard with children, actually, because I'm like, the way that I don't put bad food into my body is I don't have it in the cupboard. I don't buy it. That's when I'm strong. I make sure I've got a full tummy when I go shopping, and then I make better food choices. And then I've got no biscuits or whatever. But now I have children, we have biscuits for them. So yeah, it's a bit hard.
Just be aware that, you know, not one biscuit, not one packet.
But I used to have the treat corner in the living room, and it used to call to me. Now it's in a different room, so it's not so accessible, or behind a closed door helps. So it's like thinking about how you make it as easy as possible for you to meet your values. And when you are strong on what your values are, then you judge yourself based on those values. So what you find is you care, not that you don't care how you affect other people, but other people's opinions of you matter a lot less.
Oh yeah.
You know, if somebody doesn't agree with something that I think or say, then I'm like, oh well, that's your opinion and that's okay. Whereas if I was highly invested in other people's opinions of me and people agreeing with me, then I would get triggered by them not agreeing with me, or I might feel like I can't be authentic, because if I speak my truth, they might not like me. So building the internal, your values, is really, really good for for getting rid of people pleasing, and Yeah, so that's a really important aspect of self-awareness.
That's it, living authentically.
Yeah, absolutely. But triggers is just a great one. I mean, an example from my life, which I'm still working on, is that I get very triggered by my children not tidying up. And that is because I am not a tidy person. And so actually...
Change the way you speak about yourself. If you say you're not a tidy person...
But that's what it is. It's like I'm seeing, they're mirroring back to me what I don't like about myself.
Exactly. That's your but that's so cool. At least you're aware of that trigger. That's important. Like, you're aware of that.
And also, going back to what we said before, is I come from a long line of messy people. So the tendency is to go, oh, well, my parents were messy and their parents were messy. And it's like, that's not an excuse, is it? No. Whenever you make excuses, you don't make solutions. That's why excuses are no good. Whenever you moan, you're not making solutions.
But like, it's as simple as the way you speak about yourself. Like, I used to say, I'm Irish. I was born a drinker. I had alcohol in my blood when I was conceived, and all this kind of bullshit. Like, hyping up alcohol, like drinking alcohol, because it was the thing to do. Now I'm a non-drinker, which is something I thought was alien. But because I changed it, because I believed I inherited alcoholism, I became addicted to alcohol. But I changed my fucking perception on myself when I changed my life, and now I never touch a drop of alcohol again. Because that's the thing. I became aware that I don't have to be my past. I don't have to be my parents. I really don't.
Yeah.
We can change anything we want. We don't have to be like they were. We get to be who we are. And that's why self-awareness is so important. We get to live our authenticity, our truth, and not be following the fucking shite from other people.
Yeah, and it's just, I think it's just crazy how, particularly when you look at alcohol, how that's just allowed to carry on the way it does, And I do still drink occasionally, but I don't really drink very much at all. But I am very aware that, like, I actually went out with my friends, who I would normally drink with.
Yeah,
and I was sober, and I still had a great time, and I still got up and danced like a lunatic, because that's how I dance. That's how I
do. Me too. And you don't need alcohol to dance, just go crazy. Everyone's drunk, they don't care.
Yeah, but it was just really interesting.
You had a different awareness of your surroundings when you went out sober. It's amazing.
Way. I was just like, the time lasted a lot longer. Like, I felt like there was more time. It felt like
you got to remember everything.
I didn't spend very much. That was amazing. People's reactions. A man asked me, "It's like, can I buy you a drink?" And I was like, "You can, but I'm not drinking alcohol." And he's like, "Why not?" So I was just like,
are you super? You're not strong, so you're pregnant. This is what we get in Ireland, like.
It's like, why do you have to have an excuse not to drink? That's just weird, isn't it? Yeah.
I used to be discriminated. Like, when I stopped giving up drink, I remember having a bottle of water when everyone was doing the cheers, and somebody pulled back their drink as if I was a leper because I wasn't drinking alcohol. I was like, what? I'm excluded because I'm sober? Fuck off.
Yeah.
Sorry, but Jesus, we get judged for changing our reality. We're the ones that are self-aware, and we're the ones then deemed as crazy or the outsiders.
Yeah. And I think, what I also noticed is that that people like didn't realize that I wasn't drunk. Like,
they're too busy. Like, once they get over the part that you're not drinking, they forget you're not drinking.
Because what I did is, I said, it's not that I said I wasn't drinking at all. I was like, oh, well, I don't really drink very often, so I'm just gonna drink pop at first and then maybe have one later on. And then I didn't. And then when I said that, oh, I can give you a lift home because I haven't had a drink, they were like, you didn't have one? And I was like, no. But so it just shows that it doesn't actually matter, and I save so much money. I think it's weird how fast you drink. Like, because I wasn't drinking alcohol, I had probably maybe 4 drinks. I felt very hydrated. Whereas they're like spending half the time queuing up at the bar.
I know.
But yeah, another drink.
You spent about 3 days in the toilet in the queue, 3 days at the bar at the queue, and you're wasting most of your night in the toilet or in the queue. You know, and when you're sober, you just get to dance the night away and not be dying the next day, and you remember.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I could even give people a lift home, and I saved money. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
great.
not a fortune, like, you know, and that's the power of self-awareness. We became aware of our patterns, or we became aware of what we didn't want to do anymore, and we followed through with that. You know, a lot of people aren't going to, like, somebody might say, I think it'd be no alcohol, and then they actually won't follow through, and they'd be like, they'd follow back the crowd again. That's a lack of self-awareness, and literally just being a sheep.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I really liked this quote. To know yourself, you must sacrifice the illusion that you already do, which I really like, because I think I thought I knew myself, and I definitely didn't know myself at all. And maybe I still don't. I think I've got a better awareness of myself, but I still think, there's more exploration to do always, isn't there? I still get triggered by things, and I still just get curious, like what is it that why is it? How?
But that's the thing. With say for Carl Jung, he speaks about individuation, and that's the coming to know thyself.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts off with the persona, as we've spoken about before, and that's the mask we put on to try and fit into society. What we believe that we need to be accepted. And it's when we get past that stage that we end up facing our shadow, and that's where the triggers lie. The parts of ourselves that we're afraid to show are triggered in us through watching or seeing other people. And that's when we start to become aware. We start to see that and realize that that person is actually just a reflection of me. There's parts of me I'm hiding that I want to bring out. And maybe that person is showing these things to me. And that's where you get in touch with your shadow. And it's only when you get to the soul part, the anima animus, that you kind of start to understand the other parts of yourself, your soul and your shadow. And then you finally come to where you know that your true self. And that does take a while, and it takes a lot of that shadow work, and it takes a lot of that introspection and self-awareness to come to a place where you actually do know who you are, and you actually present yourself as your fully authentic self, without ever worrying again what other people will think or say. And I've gotten to that stage now where I'm going to say it. Look, if you're triggered by stuff that I'm saying, then that's something that you need to look at. So if people are triggered by my words or my videos, that's actually a guide for them. So in fact, we're healing somebody if we're triggering them. Well, that's if they're self-aware. If they're not self-aware, then they're just going to get angry.
And that's a really interesting change that does make a massive difference to your life. So normally, or before doing becoming self-aware, if somebody triggers you, it's their fault, isn't it? Like you're like, they've done this, or they're this, or they're that, or they
external blame,
my feelings. Like, and now it's flipped on its head. It's like, why did that bother me?
Yeah,
like,
but that's it.
It's a 100% turnaround, because when people upset me in the past, I was like, oh well, why are they treating me like this? They're this, but it's all the focus on them. But now if I get triggered, I'm like, isn't that interesting? Like, what is it that I need to work on there? What is it? There's something that's not healed there, or there's something, there's an area of my life I need to work on, which is tidying.